So in thinking about this connection to the land, black has always been green. In 1865, under the order of William T. Sherman, there was a special field order number 15 that promised that recently freed slaves would each receive 40 acres and a mule. At the time, there were about 400,000 acres of land and about 40,000 freed slaves who were to be granted through the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, claim to land so that they could create self-sufficient existences. So I sometimes like to just put text up because I think it has a different resonance than if you just see it in a book, to see it larger than life and to also hear it. Whenever 3 respectable Negroes, heads of families, shall desire to settle on land and shall have selected for that purpose an island or a locality clearly defined within the limits above designated, the inspector of settlements and plantations will himself or by such subordinate officer as he may be appointed give them a license to settle such island or district and afford them such assistance as he can enable them to establish a peaceable agricultural settlement. The 3 parties named will subdivide the land under the supervision of the inspector among themselves, and such others may choose to settle near them, so that each family shall have a plot of not more than 40 acres of tillable ground, and when it borders on some water channel with not more than 800 feet front, in the possession of which land the military authorities will afford them protection until such time as they can protect themselves or until Congress shall regulate their title. The quartermaster may, on the requisition of the inspector of settlements and plantations, place at the disposal of the inspector 1 or more of the captured steamers to ply with between the settlements and 1 or more of the commercial points heretofore named in order to afford the settlers the opportunity to supply their necessary wants and to sell the products of their land and labor. So the Freedmen's Bureau was actually part of the Department of War. And here's just a clip from the New York Times from that year that outlines the same thing. This is an example of an actual land deed that was granted to Richard Brown about a month after the Freedmen's Bureau was established. As you can imagine, it was short-lived and was fought with huge resistance in various forms. I won't go into a civics lessons, but there was the Black Codes, sharecropping, Jim Crow laws, and the infamous Dred Scott, which actually came in 1857, just prior to the Emancipation Proclamation, which basically said that it does not by any means follow, because he has all the rights and privileges of a citizen of a state, that he must be a citizen of the United States. So basically making sure through a system of very strongly enforced sub-laws or subversive means to make sure that black farmers who were legally granted rights to land basically fall back into systems of slavery. There's an image of Dred Scott. So in thinking about the difficulties that blacks had with moving from slavery to freedom and then trying to emancipate themselves and be self-sufficient with the land, there was great difficulty and eventually a push to move towards the north through black migration, the Great Migration. And with doing that, there became a stigma placed on the idea of farming or agrarian life in relationship to self-sufficiency. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit and talk about the disconnect that seems to exist in our popular imaginations between that history of a relationship to the land and a desire to want to sustain oneself from the land, and this new version of consumerism that has been all-consuming with the black community. So this is a picture of rapper Lil' Kim, shot by Dave LaChapelle, where he's actually fused her with the Louis Vuitton symbol. And perhaps for me, the poster child of this shift from agrarian life to a shift in excessive consumption is Lil Wayne. This is the current cover of Rolling Stone magazine, and Lil Wayne is the creator of the word bling, which is now contained in the Merriam-Webster's dictionary. So again, I like to just highlight words because sometimes hearing them, we can become desensitized to things. So for me, the irony of him saying, the excessiveness that he believes in wholeheartedly, and thinking about a chorus like this when compared to something like Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. Bling, bling, every time I come around your city, bling, bling. Pinky ring worth about 50, bling, bling. Every time I buy a new ride, bling, bling. Lorenz's or Yokohama tires, bling, bling. These are gold teeth. This is a line from one of the songs, man, I got the price of a mansion around my neck. And just the irony of coveting material items and wondering the price differential between this mansion around his neck and the 40 acres that he could have used that same money to buy right now. This is T-Pain, a cohort of his. There are some of the lyrics. I'll slip ahead. So I've started to do this series of collages to just wonder about what it is that we're doing. And this idea of Lil Wayne, who's from New Orleans and was completely silent during Katrina, and not to pick on him, but just to imagine this idea of somebody who actually comes from an agrarian living or a land that he knows has a history of that, and his desire to instead cultivate grills and bling bling. So in fact, now black is not green. So I can't help but wonder what he would do sitting with a group of men such as these. This is an image by local artist Kay Bacante. And this perhaps is the most telling image. This is 3 generations of Loudon Marshalls. This is the grandfather who owns a farm, who's trying to pass it on to his son, who's actually turned his back and is walking away. And here's the grandson, who probably won't have either the land or the knowledge base, depending on how long he has with his grandfather. So family farming as a whole is fading out in the country, and right now there are less than 18,000 black-owned farms. At its peak, there were 2 million. I'm going to skip ahead and we can talk about some of these statistics later, but I just wanted to show a series of images that might help further our dialogue. Is the new black sustainable? Is the new sustainable black? So again, starting to talk about this synergy between the past and the future. And started to think about current movements or current events that are happening that might suggest that there is a glimmer of hope. So these are actually families that are still working together to both work the land and then do the business or the management aspects of it. So I want to highlight a couple of people, both local and national, that I feel are examples of sustainability being the new black. Instead of Wayne Carter, I'd love it if most young people knew who Moderator Carter is, who started Bronx Sustainability several years ago and was a MacArthur Genius Awardee. Van Jones, our own local celebrity turned White House advisor for all things green. He started both the Ella Baker Center and the Green for All movement. I just like this image because it kind of plays on the ability of the internet and of kind of branding green or reclaiming the consumer strategy for greening and moving it back to a social justice movement. This is Will Allen of Growing Power, which is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, working with some young people in his hydroponic farms and worm bins. Some work he's done in Chicago. And this is Edith Boone, who's actually here today, who is a local artist, mother, activist, educator. And so I got the opportunity to meet with her last weekend and just talk to her about the ideas of green movement and sustainability, and we struck a fast friendship. So I want to just include a couple of pictures of her to say that perhaps the new movement isn't so new at all. This is an image that she did of her son. It's called Tribute of Love. I think that's the name. That's what was put on the bottom. But I love this image of her kind of in the back, blanketing and showering him and planting him as a seed, and he's going to grow up to be something wonderful. So something done prior to the popularity of greening, but that still sustains the history and culture of the green movement. So I wanted to add that I think that she's a walking example of the new black, the always black, the sustainable black, resilient out of heritage, DNA, and mere human existence. So I'm hoping that with this new generation of the internet and the ability to proliferate a message to young people in a message that they might be able to hear, that we might be able to counter the messages of a lot of popular culture and consumption. These are the sons of Marcel Diallo, who is a local activist who's hard at work in West Oakland creating urban farm there and learning from the practices of Will Allen. So I thought I wanted to end with his sons, who are 7 and 3 and don't know any different about making farms in West Oakland using hydroponic technology and worm bins. So I'm hoping that that will help us regain our dignity and the pride that we began with from Africa and beyond.